This is Interpreting Wine, host and founder Lawrence Francis welcoming you back to the Market Pulse UK series. Featuring a cross-section of UK hospitality professionals, including sommeliers, importers, independent merchants and wine bars. With voices from Suffolk, Norfolk, Manchester, Scotland, as well as the capital, we're focusing on what's happening right now in their part of the industry, giving you up-to-date information from those in the know. Today's conversation features Jiachen Liu of by Le Cordon Bleu. We first hear her origin story and how she got started in wine. As you'll hear, this all moves very quickly once wine got its hooks into Jiachen. We discuss customers at Cord and specifically what influences their buying decisions, going deep into two different specific avatar types that she describes. Next, we discuss the trends that Jiachen is paying attention to and what regions she's most excited by now. This won't be any surprise at all if you're following her on social media. Before closing on her green and red flags when it comes to buying wines, which she does a great job of linking back to those customer avatars she identified earlier. Enjoy. Welcome, Jiachen, to the podcast.
Hi.
And
thanks for having me.
We know, my pleasure. And as we were just discussing, we're going to kick off by talking about you, introducing you to our listeners and introducing you a bit more to myself as well.
Sure.
And interestingly for me, your origin story starts outside of wine, I think like a lot of people. Yes. So take us back to what probably now feels like your previous life. Talk about how did wine get its hooks into you back then, and how has your relationship with wine changed in the various roles that you've held within wine?
Sure. I mean, growing up, I've always been a foodie. Actually, a whole family. We're a foodie family. Mm-hmm. As you know, growing up, you get access to, more tasting menu. And then when you're old enough, you get to try wine pairing with menu. And mm-hmm. then that would be my first sort of interaction with wine. And mm-hmm. then, but that was totally having a glass of wine with food for fun. Mm-hmm. With friends, nothing serious. And then when I was in law school, I remember after my bar exam, flying to Napa, Sonoma for the first time, spent a whole week there. That was my first time to go into the wineries and vineyards to see, wow, there's so much beyond just bottle of wine. Something in the vineyard, something in the winery, there's a lot to know. But that was, again, just as an amateur wine drinker back then. I was not even like a student. But then after a few years of practicing law, 2018, I decided to take a long break to come to London to join the Cordon Bleu and their wine program. And that is a 6-month program led by a master sommelier, who is my best friends now in the wine industry, and also a great teacher who actually changed my career path. So during that 6 months, every day we did theory and tasting for 6 hours, and I couldn't get enough every day. After 6 hours, I would still grab him to ask questions until the point that he would say, Jiachen, I really need to go. I need to catch my train to go home. But then I realized, this is the subject I just really want to know more. I genuinely I was amazed. So at that time, I decided, okay, I'm going to change career to go into the wine industry. But at that time, I had no idea how and when I could join the industry. And then also trying to get a wine job in London. Still nowadays for somebody from other country, it's not as easy. Yeah. So I had that in mind, but then I went back to the States and I went back to my my previous job and then doing the lawyer work. And then 2022, I came here for the WSET Level 4 diploma exam. That was the D3 exam, the last one. When I was in London for the exam, I met my future boss at that time just for a casual coffee. And then after an hour of talking about wine study, our passion for wine and food, and then he just asked me, when can you start? I can give you a sommelier job. And I was like, I didn't know that was a job interview. But then I was thinking, you know what, here's the opportunity. And I need to, basically I need to get my hands dirty to be able to get into the industry. So yeah, that's how everything started. Went back, packed up, came back to London. That was September 2022. And starting from there, just, new career, new life. And so far, the whole industry has been treating me really well.
I love it. And yeah, I can totally relate to, I guess, stopping and looking back and kind of connecting the dots. And
yeah.
I think it will be really interesting, to hear how maybe you call yourself a former lawyer.
Yes, right.
Talks us through the rest of the interview, because I think it's certainly, I'm a former psychologist, but the truth is I use the psychology all the time in what I'm doing. Don't be scared.
Absolutely.
But I think again it will be interesting to see and to hear how that base experience kind of plays out in your day to day and in the conversations that we're having. To kind of, I guess, flesh out and kind of finish off for now the section looking at you. Could you take us then into a little bit more detail of how that role grew and how really you've grown, I guess, since 2022?
Sure. So I'm one of those very lucky people in the industry. So I started end of September 2022 as a sommelier for the first time in the industry, in hospitality actually. And then 2 weeks later, I got the opportunity to compete in Cordon Bleu, the sherry and food pairing competition, the UK final, and won with my chef partner. And then the following year, we went to Spain for the international final, and we came back with the best starter and sherry pairing for the team UK. I had to open my presentation that day at the final to say that, today it takes a Chinese with an American passport to represent the UK to show you that a traditional Spanish wine goes really nice with Japanese food. So there's a lot of diversity in the team, and we were really proud of that. And then before the Cordon Bleu, I had the opportunity to compete for the national final in Gosset matchmaker, champagne and food pairing. Mm-hmm. And then I got to win that competition as well. So those give me some competition exposure, and then also helped me to basically practice, to give me a lot of opportunity to meet people, to see what I should do, what I need to do, what I should learn from other competitors and from other colleagues. And then I spent a year and a half at my previous job, where that was a fine dining Japanese restaurant. So not only I got to learn wine service, I got to learn sake and sake pairing, and of course, Japanese food and some culture, which was very, very helpful. And then now I'm the head sommelier at Court by the Cordon Bleu, which is a fine dining French restaurant. So I could transfer those experience and then put that into my now daily service. Of course, it's a little bit different. And then we do more tasting menu pairing nowadays, which is something I really enjoy actually. Really love to talk to the guests about food and wine, and then surprise them with some, creative pairing, let's say it that way.
Let's talk a bit about specifically your customers at Court by Le Cordon Bleu. So let's understand a bit more about them. And the way that I would ask you to describe them to us is to kind of almost think about this typical customer. We'll try to sort of bring them to life and talk about them as an individual, if you like. I know there are of course multiple people with multiple interests, but if I was to say, your typical customer, like who are they? Where are they from? What do they do? Are they regulars? Before getting into a bit more about how do they buy wine? Do they come with more pre-formed ideas, or do they like to have a conversation with you and be inspired by what's on in the kitchen, and maybe as well what you and the team there are kind of most interested at the specific time?
Sure. I would say, like, in general, we have two groups of customers or guests, because our location, where we're in the middle of the financial district here, we're on Fleet Street, so we're close to a lot of big law firms, accounting firms, and big companies. For lunchtime, I would say majority of them were business guests. They're here for business lunch. And then we have a small group of tourists, or, what just call it non-business customers. And then for dinner time will be just the opposite. More of those tourists or local people who are looking for tasting experience. And then some of them would be the business people who are coming to, as an extension of their business discussion or meeting. Yeah. And we also have the private hiring downstairs, the room available for them to, if they want a private room for more, private conversation. So those would be the two groups that we usually have. And then I would say more business guests will come with a preset, mind when it comes to wine. But then we do have some regulars who come regularly with their business partners or their clients, and then try to build this connection with them. So when they arrive, I kind of know what kind of wine they usually like to drink. And then if they're so engaged in the business conversation, I would not interrupt. But otherwise, and, I'll say, what, this is the new item on the wine list, and then, might suit your palate, and then, try to introduce something to them. But then the tourists or more, say, casual guests, they are more likely to have a longer conversation with me to talk about the wine options. Particularly for this year, I'm putting some interesting wines by the glass. So they see things from China, from Greece, from Cyprus, from those regions they're not quite familiar with. But then I believe that opens a lot of conversation, and then give them an opportunity to try the wine, and then to get surprised by the quality of the wine, but also have to give us a chance to talk to the guests to build that trust. So maybe for their next visit, or, just to create more experience for them.
Yeah, I guess, and it's, again, always interesting to hear the different attitudes that people come in with. And as you say, of course, it's there, we do have to generalize, but I think, you've really spoken there for me about kind of two avatars, where it's like, okay, business, it feels like maybe even slightly more in the lunch mode, they're a little bit more focused, maybe a little bit more time conscious as well.
Right.
Get in and have the lunch, versus, okay, as you say, tourists, or, maybe slightly more in the evening. Maybe it's a little bit more of a relaxed, and as you say, just the mindset. We can have a conversation. We can,
right.
As you say, maybe gives you an opportunity to build trust, and very interesting with the different types of wines going on by the glass as well. I guess with some of those people, it also allows you to give people wines to try and say, maybe give you a feel for what they're looking for and what they're interesting. Okay, so let's talk Turkey, as they say.
Yeah.
Let's talk about price. So
yes.
I guess, again, now that we've established those kind of two different avatars, is there a big difference in terms of what they're happy to spend on a bottle or on a glass, and what might be some of the factors that, I guess, influence that either way?
Right. I guess business guests, depending on the situation, depending on the occasion, tend to spend a little bit more on, say, traditional style appellations. And then, sometimes people are saying, that's because they're on company credit card. But I think it's not always the case. It's not because they are spending company money. It's really not because of that. I think that sometimes because you have, say, you have a table of guests from all different countries, some from the US, some from Italy, some from France, and the hosts tend to find something that is known by everybody.
Yeah.
And then you want to get a crowd pleaser and then will not offend any palate, will go really nicely with food, but not obscure. So they tend to go for, say, a Burgundy or Bordeaux, some bigger appellation that they know, and then just naturally comes with a higher price point. Right? I mean, like we all know that style-wise, some people would say that some nice Burgundy it's really nice, but I'll be happily drinking a bottle of Oregon Pinot Noir, right? But then, the truth is Burgundy does cost in general higher, to more money. So, but then a casual diner, they are interested in trying something new. And in so many occasions, particularly when I started to talk to them and I introduced them to some interesting stuff. And then I would say, like, we all know that when you're looking for value for money, places like South Africa and say Greece, you can get really nice quality wine, but then it does not cost you as much.
Yeah.
So then it seems that they spend less. So I wouldn't say necessary is because they're not having a business dinner, so they're spending less, but it's just, some interesting and quality stuff just does not cost as much.
Yeah.
So
would you be able to, and I know, it's an impossible question to answer.
Yeah.
Would you be able to give us a sort of a specific kind of price range?
Sure.
For both types of customer?
Sure. I would say that the business guests are more likely to spend over £100 for a bottle. And then I would say the more casual diners, they would probably spend less. They're less likely to go for more than 100 or 150. They tend to keep it slightly lower. And then, champagne, same thing. Business guests would be more likely to be around 150 to 200 range. And then the casual diners, they are happily taking my recommendation on champagne alternative, some traditional methods, sparkling wine, and which is, as you know, less when it comes to the price.
I guess that's also just another point. It just reminds me of all of the wonderful tastings. I mean, we bump into each other at tastings quite often.
Right.
So in London, you are able to access and to try wines from all over the world that absolutely do perform so well, and I think are interesting, and price to value ratio.
Absolutely. Yeah, so us, we are very lucky to be sommeliers in London. We have the access to all different kind of wine and at different price range. So we get to choose, and we're able to put a good wine at different price range.
I have a question which actually flows directly from your earlier comment, more thinking about the business people, and the word that I wrote down was, it sounds like they almost want to de-risk the decision. It's like it feels like a little bit of the business mindset kind of carrying across. But I was curious then, and I kind of felt you were about to say Burgundy and Bordeaux as the kind of safe choices. Right. What would you say is the most common kind of, not exactly second option, but if people are saying, okay, we want Burgundy, we want a really nice producer, is it? You've already mentioned Oregon there. Is that the next place you can take people from Burgundy? And then where might you take them, or where might they let themselves be taken, more to the point, from Bordeaux?
Sure. And I say, if we take Burgundy as an example, Oregon would be one, and South Africa. And then sometimes if I want to say, if somebody's looking at the white Burgundy, and then you can feel that it might be a little bit over their budget, but you can, from the initial conversation, you start to know that whether the hostess or whoever is in charge of picking wine for the evening, whether they're more open-minded, or is this a very serious business meeting, or it's like clients after work and they talk a little bit about work, a little bit about wine, a little bit about fun stuff. You get the vibe. And then in that situation, I might suggest a Surtical from Santorini, but it's oak aged. So that could be a fun alternative, and then definitely a different price range. And then say Bordeaux would be a lot of people's first choice at the restaurant if they were trying to get a safe wine for everybody. But then for alternative, I might suggest, again, could be US, could be South Africa, could be Italian wines. And then sometimes I even wine from Lebanon. I'm looking at actually some interesting thing from Israel now. So it's just, there are a lot to introduce to my guests. It's just I need the right moment, the right guest in the right moment.
Yeah. So let's change tack a little bit then, Jiachen. And before we started speaking, I asked you about trends, this is kind of then shifting back to you. And I would like to just ask you about, are there any particular, it might be producers, it might be regions, it might be styles that, let's say, they have your attention right now. These are things that are kind of front of mind, let's say that.
Sure. I mean, my friends in the industry or outside the industry, a lot of them, they know that I have my interest in Greek wine and Cypriot wine. Part of the reason is the indigenous grape variety there is just so amazing. My principle is, if there's something that I cannot pronounce, I need to taste it. So that is definitely my focus, one of my focuses, I would say. But my personal interests aside, I do find that a lot of wine offer great value for money, which is very important nowadays in restaurant. So, and also I think that their wine is traditionally made to go with food. They don't really have, like, say, the American sort of tradition to go to the bar and order a glass of wine, you sip on the wine. Wine is to go with food in those places. And then, so I find that a lot of wines are very, very food friendly, making them great pairing options, and also by the glass options for good price, good flavor, and good value. So I think that I want to bring more to my guests just to try, and particularly when I put them on the by the glass list, I got a lot of positive feedback, and the guests would say, I never try anything from Greece. I never try anything from Cyprus. And then, and they'll get them curious. They want to ask questions, and they taste it. And if they don't like it, it is fine. It's just one glass. Nobody's going to be super, upset about that. And then, so I think that is the good area to look at. And then, and of course, a lot of red wine, they also come with good aging potential. So that's another interesting point for restaurant. And also, another thing is for me to look into I mentioned wine, the Israeli wine or Mediterranean wine. And then another category I started to put a little bit more attention to is the kosher wine, kosher wine region. Because the thing is, we do have guests because of, we have a lot of business guests from all these law firms, accounting firm, and every once in a while we do have kosher guests coming in with their own food, but they join the business meeting or events. And then previously we could only offer them beer, and we set it aside for them to enjoy. But then I feel that when all the other guests are enjoying great wine, and they are left out. So when it comes to creating experience for the guests, I believe that we need to keep guests, like every guest, in our mind. So, so I think to give them the options, I'm not saying that I would, put a whole 30-page menu for them, but to give them the option for the guests when they come with their friends, then they know that we have them in mind. I think that would be a good thing. And then nowadays, kosher wine, they're just made like a conventional wine, a lot of them, but just following the kosher rule. So the quality is not like we're talking about, those lesser quality wine from 20 years ago. Yeah. So you see all this great top champagne house, Bordeaux Burgundy producers doing amazing kosher wine. So that's another different group of products I'm looking at.
On the trends point of view, you brought up what is probably the most enduring and maybe is the most repeated trend that is around the world of wine, which is this idea of people choosing to drink less. And I would just love to really delve down a little bit more into that. So, we hear about this trend a lot, but what does it actually mean, in terms of what you're seeing and maybe, different customer behaviors that again, you're seeing, you're reading, and you're needing to adapt for to give them the best possible experience?
Right. I mean, I definitely, nowadays, I get more often guests asking me, what's the alcohol percentage of the wine? And then I would say more people are taking by the glass versus committing to a bottle. But then I think that because of that, then every glass counts. I mean, not just for the restaurant to make money. I'm not saying like because people are only drinking one glass or two, so I'm going to, put the wine super expensive. I'm going to, take the most out of them. It's not that. It's that I think that, I mean, even when the guest is drinking less, we still have to create the same guest experience. Then, so every glass matters. Then I want that every glass will give them some experience that they will look back to. But then that will create a challenge to us. Say, because of people are drinking less, maybe people are going out less. Then we get maybe our regulars are not coming as often as they used to. And then when they come to you, what can you do with wine, with food, with the pairing?
Yeah.
That gives me another reason to put some so-called interesting wine. So my thing for this year, I told my team members, I told them that this year what we want to do is if the variety is well known, then I want that to come from a lesser known region. Hence, we have Riesling from China. Or if it's a lesser known variety, then we want people to be comfortable, to be confident to order that off the menu by a glass. Then we want that to be from a known region or country, so they know, okay, I'm not sure about this. I don't know this variety, but I trust this country. I know that, France, Italy, they always make good wine. I always had a great experience. I think that there's a lot for us to consider, right? So, and then also, I think whether we like to hear it or not, I think more guests are nowadays price sensitive. So you really want to find them something that, when they take a sip, they feel like, okay, so that's worth, what I'm spending, what I'm talking about. I mean, I'm not just talking about, over 20 pounds a glass. Also, at the lower price point, I mean, I would just want to make sure that people feel that, okay, this is worth drinking. This is a good wine.
I think it's a point very well made, and something that I've been talking about, and I believe is super important. Is just how do people feel spending their money, and I think that, I'll be honest, I mean, not necessarily here, but I think this is where we've maybe don't always bring people with us in wine.
Right.
Whatever people are spending, make them feel good about spending it.
Absolutely. I mean, like even with us, I remember just a few weeks ago, I had this really lovely, nice old couple coming for our lunch tasting menu, and then they were very straightforward. They sat down. They said, we just want the cheapest bottle of wine, which I actually, a lot of time, I appreciate when the guests are being very, very straightforward with me. So I could help them. But then I also feel that it's also very important for us to look at the entry price point and then look for some good options for those guests. Because I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, but I do care about them probably even more in a sense, because you can tell that they saved up. They made that in, this is their special occasion. And then they come to you. They're looking for a great experience without spending too much. But then we don't want them to feel that, this is the wine list. They cannot find anything they could afford and enjoy. That would be such a shame. So, yeah.
No, it totally makes sense. And I think actually as well, to just build on your point there, Jiachen, is I think it's actually an opportunity, because I think what I would imagine is happening in that situation is that it is price led. So maybe the expectations of what people are going to get also comes down. It's like, okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I want the cheapest wine. I would imagine then the expectations come down. But I think connecting the dots there, if you can then come out and bring something. And it's gonna have a story behind it, right? It's gonna
exactly.
be this interesting, maybe indigenous grape variety. Maybe it's your two rule there from earlier. Maybe it's now a bit of an unfamiliar country and an unfamiliar grape. So we're a little bit off the map, and it's like you explain them, you give them a bit of a story, and then you open the bottle, and it's like, this is really, really good. This is the cheapest one. It's like you can actually blow away their expectations.
Absolutely.
Okay, I love it. That's great to be able to share. Really, then the final, the fourth act of today is to really delve into really some specifics about you and your role and how wines get onto your list, how they kind of get through the door and get onto your list. I've asked you for, first of all, your red flags. And again, my definition of a red flag is just, of course, you've got only a limited time in the day, and you've got a big list, and you've got 101 things to do. So when you're considering bringing something onto the list, what are some of the things that when you see them, they sow doubt in your mind, or even just straight off, you're like, okay, I don't think we can really carry this conversation any further.
Sure. I mean, we talk about the value of the wine, and I keep saying that over our conversations. I think that a wine that fails to deliver the value would be a no for my wine list. I mean, so my place right now, the guests, I would say I don't have that many guests to drink the label, if you know what I meant, like they're looking for, I own, this is the, I'm not going to name those because I think that's not fair to own those other places with the wine, or, but just say, I have more people to drink the wine than the label.
Yeah.
Then I think, yes, I have a few on the wine list, but my main focus would not be on that, because I think we have to consider the quality in the context of the price as well. So we certainly shouldn't expect a wine at £30 range to taste like a £300 bottle. But then, so I mean, this part I particularly like the MW, the blind tasting part, where you have to judge the quality in the context of the, so you put that in mind, and that's, then this one wine might be cheaper on trade, for the trade price, but actually offer more quality. Then that would be something that I would choose over some just famous label. But when you taste the wine, it's like, okay, is that really worth the price? You know what I'm saying? Because I need to look for something good for my guests, and then at different price range as we talk about. So I want them to choose a wine, from the price range that they're comfortable with, and then always have some good stuff for them to enjoy at the dinner, or when they come over to us. And I think that that's what I always have in mind when I'm tasting wine for my wine list.
Presumably, though, that's as well, that again, that answer, it feels like it could be a 3-hour conversation.
Right.
There's a lot probably that goes into that, but it feels as though you're needing to to balance lots of different elements within that.
Right.
To get to say that's in or out, or that's at least it passes on the price to value criteria.
Exactly. I mean, like, of course, I want to bring in diversity. I want to bring in, different variety, different region, different, different style. But then at the end of the day, is it worth it? And then that's something I always consider.
Okay. And then the natural yin to the yang there is to look at the green flags. So again, these are things that really, I guess, capture your attention and maybe put some initial credit in the balance and say, okay, I'm definitely going to consider this. I want to take a closer look. Of course, then we have the opposite. The value for money is obviously then would be a green flag. But what other green flags might there be besides value for money?
Sure. I mean that I always want to encourage conversation between the sommeliers and the guests. But then at the same time, I also understand that not every guest will want to have a long conversation with us, or some because they are just they're in a business meeting, or they just want to enjoy themselves with their friends, family, or they just or they don't want to talk. Exactly. Or they want to, Valentine's Day, they want to just impress their partner. So in addition to the lesser known varieties, and of course I need to consider to put something that is well known for people to go to, and the appellation, the variety, so they have some choices. But then at the same time, I want to put something that people want to ask question about, or something that I can go to the table, say, okay, so you're thinking about this style, you're thinking about like a medium plus body wine to red wine to go with your venison dish. Oh, have you tried this Marotheptical from Cyprus? The name indicates that this is a little thief. Why do we call it a thief? Because this grape has to be co-planted to steal the pollen from other variety to be able to have the fruit set. All these questions and answers and the stories, and people are, oh yeah, that's interesting. Let me try something like that, or this kind of conversation. And then throughout the conversation, I get to know my guest palates a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And then the next time when they come back, then I know what they're looking for, the style of wine, and then the price range maybe, and then I could help them even better. And then, of course, and that will build the trust between the guests and the restaurant and us, and then it will be a really positive thing to have.
What you've described there for me in terms of the conversation, it feels as though the fuel for that is a story, right? It's like,
yes.
It's actually, which I find, again, as anyone knows me, I'm a big, proponent of the importance of storytelling, and quality has over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And you can go to just about anywhere in the world now that makes wine and find incredible quality. I think that story is just going to get more and more important. And I often talk about that, having a short version of the story, like you kind of said there, the version that can be told at the table or can be used to kind of grab people's attention. But of course, having the big version as well, that is, for the geeks to really go and.
Right, exactly. So that's another thing we always have to do in the restaurant. We have to read the guests and know that how much they want to know, because sometimes we can just keep on going, right? But then it's a good thing to know how much they want to know, but also when they're very engaged and they ask more questions, and then you also know their knowledge level when it comes to wine, and then you adjust your language, and is you don't want to use jargon to those people who really don't. But then also for people who already finished their level 3, level 4, and they want to talk about that. So,
final question, really, in closing, I really, really enjoyed today. And I asked you before we started, was there anything else relevant you wanted to mention? And you gave a very intriguing answer about the differences between law and food and wine. So I won't steal your thunder, but I'd love you to bring that to my attention and bring that to the attention of the listeners as well.
I really enjoy my days as a lawyer, But I must say that from my observation, law separates people. Law separates people in so many ways because at the end of the day, there's always two sides, in the courtroom. But food and wine has the magic to bring people together, right? I mean, when we're very happy, we want to celebrate with food and wine. When we're sad, we're using food and wine to soothe ourselves. And then, even after the saddest moment, I guess, in life, what do people usually do after the funeral even, right? We eat and drink. So I think that this is the part I really love about food and wine and what I'm doing. And and I just want to make sure that everybody who comes to us for a food and wine experience leaves with a big smile.
A massive thanks to today's guest, Jiachen Liu, head sommelier at by Le Cordon Bleu. If you're not already, make sure you're following her on Instagram, where her handle is _pairing_life. The link is below. You can also follow her wine and food pairings match of the day, where she pairs a drink choice and a food choice from one of the matches of the day all throughout the World Cup. Really good fun and a massive undertaking given the much bigger World Cup we're having this year. Reflecting on the episode, again, there is so much for me to take away here. I will give you again my top 3. First off, I really like how Jiachen was able to give such a detailed description of her customer avatar, the business profile and the tourist avatars. In my experience, this is such an important starting point in providing the best customer experience possible. And I think this really laid the foundations for what she spoke about in the rest of the conversation. My second point is how this then connected to the conversation around price. The business guests spending more on the classic wine regions, perhaps wanting to play it more safe, contrasted by those looking for better price to quality ratio, who were more open to more exotic regions like Greece, South Africa or China. And I think this gives specific feedback to lesser known appellations about how they can compete even with the big boys. Knowing that you can deliver something familiar tasting at a more competitive price point will be something that plays specifically to that tourist avatar that Jiachen described. Lastly, I love how Jiachen went beyond the tired cliche of people are drinking less and went right into specifics. So as she said, if her regulars are drinking less, she's probably seeing them less often, which means she has chosen to de-risk the wine choice for them, keeping one element familiar, lesser known region pairs with international grape variety, or lesser known grape pairs with a more well-known region or country. I thought this was an interesting constraint that puts the guest experience first and means that Jiachen can surprise and delight guests no matter how much they're spending. Next time on Interpreting Wine Market Pulse in episode 603, I'll be speaking with Tom Greater of the Crystal Palace Wine Club. Subscribe to be alerted when the episode goes live, and I will see you then.